2010. I'd like to introduce Jason Oyakawa.
And this is Rachel Kiekhofer, and we're very excited to be here today to culminate our 3 years as Lincoln Lions.
Writing this speech allowed us to reflect back on our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years.
We look back on the 3 questions we were asked each year. In 6th grade, we were asked, what makes a good student? In 7th, what makes a worthwhile life? And finally in 8th, what makes a good citizen of the community?
And the things we learned each year revolved around answering these questions. Student-led conferences in 6th grade taught us that hard work, determination, and respect for your studies were what constituted the work ethic of a good student.
The creation of our Who Am I portfolios in 7th grade, a venture of research and perspective, was a way to define ourselves as students and citizens living worthwhile lives.
And on the subject of citizens, the minimum of 12 hours of community service we fulfilled in 8th grade helped us to become citizens living in our school-wide, local, statewide, and national communities. Throughout the year, we read hundreds of pages in novels and stories from the perspectives of adults looking back on their childhoods of oppression, poverty, and unknowing in the face of prejudice.
However, 8th grade wasn't only about books. It was also about science, math, history, and writing. In each of these subjects, we learned one thing or another that we can connect to our futures as citizens of the community outside of Lincoln.
In science, 2 of those things we learned were Newton's first and third laws.
The first is the law of inertia. The law of inertia states that matter that is unmoving will remain unmoving, and matter that is moving will remain moving unless acted upon by an unbalanced outside force.
Much like matter, 8th graders, no offense to any of them, are pretty set in their ways. I know from personal experience that if I'm in the middle of a pleasant procrastination session, I will remain in that lazy state.
Unless acted upon by an outside force, like an intervening parent. Newton's third law is equally applicable to our lives at school. It states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
There's a consequence for everything, good or bad.
In other words, if a student doesn't study for a test, he'll probably fail. On the contrary, if a student does study for a test, she'll probably pass.
And kind of like Miss Webb always says, if you don't comply first, you'll definitely find yourself with a reason to complain later.
Let's move on. In English, we learned about sonnets. For all the parents out there who aren't as versed in Shakespearean poetry as we are, each of us was given one of Shakespeare's 14-line poems to memorize over the course of this year.
Just a few weeks ago, every person in Mr. Lee's English class recited the sonnet they were assigned, memorized perfectly and performed with gusto. In learning our sonnets on our own, we taught ourselves presentation techniques that will surely be instrumental in our occupational futures, even if we never read a sonnet again.
In history with Mr. Greenfield, we learned 2 important ideals to live by, not only as students, but also as adults.
The first was Mr. Greenfield's secret formula, CI equals CO squared. Let me explain. CI equals CO squared means, and pardon my language, that crap in yields crap out too.
If you start something with bad motives and bad information, the outcome probably won't be any better.
It's kind of like Newton's third law. Bad actions will lead to bad results.
The other essential piece of information Mr. Greenfield gave us is the writings of the U.S. Constitution, which explains that all people have equal and protected rights.
It's the foundations of our citizenship.
And finally, math. It's the driving force behind most of the technologies we use every day. Even though students like myself might, at times, find that math can be a drag, I, and they, know that it is essential to our futures as money managers, house builders, recipe makers, computer users, or any other real job out there.
They're all applied math, and I know that all of us can relate to at least one of those categories.
As we wrap up this speech, we're wrapping up some of our final moments as students here at Lincoln.
Blue Corps students, all of you, it's been a great year. Teachers, thank you for teaching us, all of us, that school isn't just about knowing things. It's about the life lessons. the elements that make us citizens of the various communities we'll someday join, which our studies embody.
And parents, thank you for being here today, this year, and throughout our entire lives, providing the support and love that only family can.
Thanks for listening, and congratulations to the Blue Corps class of 2010.